So
That's
good
so
morning,
cool.
everyone. As you start coming on in, it's Nick Paro on the Sick of This show, and I'm bringing my friend Sherrod from Centered America over to discuss with us some hot takes of the day, how we can work together, and different ways that we can begin building collaborative spaces across the progressive and pro-constitutional sphere. Um,
Mm.
where there's a void,
Yeah.
and there's a vacuum, and how we can start doing things together locally. So good morning. Do you mind introducing yourself to people as they come on in?
Yeah, of course. Good morning. My name is Sherrod Swaney. I'm the director of a 501(c)(4) organization called Centered America. We are pro democracy. We are trying to defend democracy and resist authoritarianism. We are trying to do that through grassroots movements, amplifying independent journalism, and just getting people out there. I started the organization kind of thinking about it. It started after this past election. Um, I was thinking about how did this go wrong? And I think we've had a lot of time to talk about this, all of us. That's how it went wrong. What did Kamala Harris do wrong? Right, like all of this, and we can go. Okay, it was Palestine, it was Israel, it was how did she use her funding right? Like just trying to get so intricate with it. Um, but we landed on the fact that the utilization of $1 billion worth of funding that Kamala Harris got, and by the way, I believe that she did a great job for the time she had, um,
Yeah, I would agree with that
was
assessment.
used a lot on social media and not grassroots movements. And what I mean by that is algorithms on social media are very tethered to the ideology of what you're viewing, right? So if you are a Democrat, you're going to see Democratic videos. If you are a conservative, you're going to see conservative videos. If you're independent, you're going to see independent videos. That's just how it works on all platforms, TikTok, Instagram, everything. If you're utilizing a ton of that funding on social media, you're going to get those videos, right? We're going to be keeping in that sphere. You're not going to get a lot of people that are wanting to vote for you that are on different sides. Um, so we decided, hey, we need to start an organization like Turning Point USA for pro democracy and anti authoritarianism, and really try and get people out.
That's awesome. I love it. It's also sort of what we're missing, um, or it feels like what's missing, because in a lot of ways, from my view, as someone who is outside the Democratic establishment, but looking in as a both a concerned citizen and someone who's now has somewhat of a voice in the community, is we were lacking community building and local building. And it was
Yeah.
all this big name, big money, like invest in what I saw was it was invest in like superstars and
Yeah.
big, big concert like things that get people fired up just a little bit for like a day or two. Um, but didn't actually, and I'm not knocking Kamala. She did an amazing job with the time she had. She was handed a terrible situation
Yeah.
and she did what she could to do as best as she could. And I don't think it's Kamala's fault that she lost. Um, I think there is blame on her side. I think there's blame on her team's side. But I think it's a lot to do with the fact that Biden hung on too long and didn't do
Oh,
what
yeah.
what he said he was going to do, which was pass the generational torch to Kamala. And I think if he had done that and allowed for a true like presidential primary on the left, we would be in a um, different place than we are.
Yeah.
Um, and that being said, I also don't want to look back, as Kamala said, is let's unburden
Yeah.
ourselves from the past. Like let's un
Exactly.
let's not put our heads in the sand and then go, oh shit, we can't do this because last time we failed, so we're not even going to try. Well, screw that.
And that's what we were trying to do is we go, okay, you can have the conversation, you can go through all the ways it went wrong, but at the end of the day, it's how we move forward, right? What does being centered look like? And we've gotten a lot of comments that they're like, how are you centered in your views, right? From a lot of the right wing
Yeah.
MAGA extremists. They're like, "What? How are you centered in your views? You're not centered, right?" Being centered doesn't mean capitulating to Trump, right?
Yeah.
We, as people who are centered, of course, we're voting Democrat, um, but that doesn't mean that we aren't centered. We went, to DC to talk across the aisle at the Principles First Summit that actually got threatened to be bombed by Enrique Tarrio. But we we went across the aisle and talked to Republicans that are very deeply against this. They were
Yeah.
very disillusioned with the Republican Party, and it kind of formed this idea that it's not a extremist issue. It's let's work together to get something going. That's you know more focused on grassroots door to door messaging, community, you know, college campuses, which, what happened to Charlie Kirk is like, I didn't agree with him. I think that he spewed hate, but I don't agree with political violence. Um, but I understand the, that feeling of relief from all that hate, right? Um, but also he did something well with what he was trying to do, which is
Yeah.
let's combat the algorithm by getting there in person, talking to people, trying to get people to understand my, viewpoint, as messed up as his viewpoint was.
Yeah.
And that's what we want to do,
That's
just in a
awesome.
more centered way.
Yeah, I like that the discussion around centered. So let's talk about that idea of centered a little bit because I think people confuse centered with left versus right or Democrat versus Republican and not centered as in my opinion, centered is we agree on a central point where discussions can begin from, such as humans deserve dignity. Humans
Mhm.
deserve freedom, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We should all be guaranteed those opportunities. We don't talk about those things that way anymore. Everything's become hyper politicized. And I love that you're finding an idea of center. So, can you describe a little of what your vision of a center, like a center discussion, might start from?
Well, a centered discussion, I've heard this before, which is something I utilize, right? If you're talking to someone across the aisle, you first start with, do you support the Constitution or do you support who you're backing? As in, if I were to ask someone who's very MAGA, very pro Trump, I'm going, do you support the Constitution or are you supporting Trump in this discussion? And you can kind of guess, you can kind of like get an answer of, can I have a conversation with this person based on what they answered to that question? Um, being centered does not mean being pro who's in office. It's I want to make sure that we are keeping everyone accountable, every politician accountable. We are under the Constitution. We are very pro Constitution. We're very, pro John Locke, right? Life, liberty, and
Yeah.
the pursuit of happiness. The idea that we left the state of nature in order to, form a government to protect our property, and things like, gerrymandering, where we are not picking our representatives for ourselves, right? I live in the state of Missouri. They just redistrict the congressional district 5, um, and that put a ton of voters who live in Kansas City, that doesn't give them the ability to vote for the candidate of their choice. That is against life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's against life, liberty, and property. Not being able to vote for the representative of your choice, and that is not centered, right? Most people, like you see in studies, Pew Research, are more centered on their views. Um, and there's also Pew Research studies where they showed, back in the last election cycle, they were showing Trump's policies and Kamala Harris's policies, and they just didn't show the names. They didn't show Donald Trump. They didn't show Kamala Harris, and more people sided with Kamala Harris's policies. That's
Yeah.
just the truth. It was like 80% or something sided with Kamala Harris's policies. Um, and then they found out the names, and they were like, "What?" Because they're more aligned with their leader, not with the actual policies.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's
That
what being
makes
centered
sense.
is.
That makes sense. So let's talk about that then. In the centered point of all this discussion, especially around things like what happened with Charlie Kirk, with the
Yeah.
shooting in Utah, and then over the weekend we had Brian Kilmeade. advocate for state euthanization or murder of homeless people, which includes veterans, which means Brian Kilmeade, and these are not your words, these are my words on this, but I'm going to stand by them, is Brian Kilmeade advocated for murdering veterans because there's at least one veteran that is homeless and unhoused. And Brian Kilmeade did not say, don't murder those ones. He just said, kill homeless people.
Yeah.
And I think we've seen the actions of that rhetoric and propaganda. Um, and I know from my own experience, but also from the research that's done, is a majority of people want gun reform of some sort.
Mhm.
Can you talk about like what you and your team's thoughts might be around gun prevention or gun violence prevention tools or
100%.
legislation?
100%. So for me, we have to start at what is going to be the most, you know, easy to pass, which is most people support registration for guns for firearms. Most people support gun background checks. Um, and those are the things that we have to talk across the aisle about. Um, I think that gun violence is getting out of control. I think that the polarization when it comes to gun violence is just it's deeply disturbing, especially after Charlie Kirk. And we're trying to center the discussion because they're looking at it's the trans people, right? It's trans gender this whole spewing bullshit. But you can kind of get into okay, but the majority of conservatives support gun legislation.
Yeah,
It's just the truth. Um, and if we are going to have a conversation, that conversation has to be about the majority. It's
yeah,
always been that way. Plurality is how we run our election cycles. Um, and even minority has power. But majority of people want something. Let's talk about it. Let's go for it. And I think what's happening right now is that a lot of people in office, congressional representatives, are voting with the donor class or voting with the NRA, and they won't uh, side with gun legislation. Of course, we have the Second Amendment, but just because we have a Second Amendment does not mean that it can't be regulated. Just like free speech, we can't go into a building and go, I'm going to incite violence on this building, on this public building, without consequences. The
yep,
freedom of speech is regulated. So can the Second Amendment. And so this idea, this extremist idea that we have a Second Amendment, it can't be regulated, is wrong. It's easily able to be, argued against that it can be regulated.
yeah.
Um,
And it says
so
so in the actual Second
yeah,
Amendment
a
too.
well-regulated militia, right?
Yeah, like it starts with a well-regulated militia, which means they wanted regulations. The founders and those who put that in said we should probably regulate the militia so that they don't get out of control.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that's a great point too, is we need to stop quibbling with their words and their framing of the argument. Um, so continuing on the gun legislation piece and that's sort of it, but tying it into local. Um, how are you at Senate America, you and the team in general, working to advocate for these measures on a local level?
Well, a lot of it is grassroots movements, door-to-door outreach. We're a 501c4 organization, which means we can lobby at the federal level. We were incorporated in January, but we are working on getting funding to do town halls, to go door to door. For an organization that takes insurance, we need to protect ourselves. We need to protect ourselves legally, right? We
Yeah.
need lawyers, right? But we wanted to go door to door. We have flyers, we have, brief info, graphs that we've already printed out, where we want to talk to people face to face about these issues because a majority supports them. How can we get everyone in line rather than looking at a leader to looking at policy? And that's by talking to them. um, Going like Missouri, there's tons of rural areas. Nationwide, we want other people doing that too. Speaking at their churches, in their community, at the library, speaking with people at town halls, really creating a community space where they can talk about these issues together in person. And I think a lot of people are scared to do that. They are more, social media is easily accessible, so they're speaking behind a phone, and that doesn't do as much as, hey, we're people and we want
Yeah,
this thing. How can we urge our leaders, because it's bottom up, not top down. How can we urge our leaders to do this? As in, we will not vote for you if you do not pass this policy that the majority of people want. And that's just by grassroots messaging.
I love it. And the idea of bottom up is what we really need to focus on. I want to pull on that string a little bit because it's the inverse of trickle down economics or trickle down politics is they
Yeah,
don't work. Top down politics don't work.
it's never worked. Nothing top down works.
No, nothing really top down works. It's always a pyramid scheme when it's top down because it's always about the top person getting the most and everybody else underneath. Um, can you talk about some of the groups that you are able to work with in local action? Are you able to work with groups like Indivisible, Common Defense, folks like that to help build the messages? What types of restrictions are placed on you in those areas, and how do you work to get around them?
So, what's cool about a nonprofit organization is I think a lot of people see it as very restrictive when I see it as very non-restrictive. Um, we don't have to. We're tax exempt. That's a big thing for getting funding and not having to go through all of that. Paying tax quarterly. We are able to just have taxes be exempt and work on our mission. A 501(c)(4) organization can lobby at the state and federal level. Um, we are not a 501(c)(3) organization, and the difference between that is 501(c)(3)s are a little bit more restrictive on the political side. They can't advocate for candidates, they can't lobby, they can't, take in, campaign money, right? And their donations are exempt from tax. So if someone donates, it's tax exempt, right? For a 501(c)(4) organization, if someone donates to us, it's not tax exempt, but we are tax exempt as an organization at the end of the year.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's good
So,
to know.
yeah. So 501(c)(4), why it's good for us is that we are able to actually write legislation and lobby it, right? And we haven't started that yet. That takes funding, right? Like
Yeah,
that's difficult. But we can do that as a 501(c)(4) organization, and that is such a big deal to us. Having the ability to just be able to lobby in that way. Um, Also, we can advocate for political candidates. We can kind of act as a pack in a way. Um, and restrictions is just that grants are a little harder to get, but people still give out grants for organizations, and that's the biggest thing that we wanted to start with was, okay, what is the extremist, MAGA movement trying to do? They are using nonprofit organizations. Turning Point is a nonprofit organization, right? It's
yeah,
huge, and it got a lot of young voters out to vote. Charlie
yeah.
Kirk did that. Turning Point USA is a nonprofit. And we were like, okay, do we want to make it an LLC, or do we want to go their route and make something more centered for the people? And decided on a 501(c)(4) organization in order to do, political activist work. So we're classified under social advocacy and political advocacy.
Oh, awesome. That's great to know, and thanks for all that really good information.
Yeah,
That's
sorry,
helpful
it's
for
it's a
us
lot.
too. No, it's great. I love it because with the work that I do with Banner and Backbone, and my own publication, we want to make sure that we're able to advocate the most effectively too, for the largest crowd in the best ways. Um, and so I definitely want to continue that part of the conversation, maybe offline,
Yeah,
a little bit more with you, because I think that'd be great to learn about the differences and
yeah,
some of the advantages and disadvantages of 501(c)(3), C4, or LLC for profit. LLCs are for profit. That scares people because it is, you have to make money, and but it's also not, it also depends on what for-profit really means, is what that profit is going to and how it's being used. Um, and so I do think, though, that the idea of a 501c4 is an incredible step forward, especially because groups like Chorus are doing it too, that Brian Tyler Cohen is running. Um, and that's more of a national level, but sticking more on the local level, because this is really where the discussion begins, and where we all really have to start focusing is, other than trying to run town halls and things like that, what are you advocating for, um, in terms of, or how are you working with other groups to get the advocation out as quickly as possible, and maintain it without a partisan lens, um, even if it's partisan issues, because that's really, I think, what is getting us the most trouble right now, is we are so extremely divided on, we've decided issues are partisan when they're not. Um, how are you working with local groups to really help reframe that discussion?
Yeah. Well, for starters, we are incorporated in January, so we have done. Actually, I'll give you a good example of something we did. Okay, so there was a data center being built here in the city of St. Louis, a huge data center in the suburb of St. Louis, St. Charles, Missouri, and they didn't know what company it was. They didn't know if it was Google. They didn't know if it was OpenAI. They had no idea what was going on. And that was a huge deal. People were going out, Republican, Democrat, they were all going out and they were protesting this data center. They didn't want it to buy their homes. They didn't want it to use our water source. They didn't want it to be loud by where they lived. It was right by a neighborhood, right by a residential neighborhood. It's huge, 500 acres, bigger than Six Flags amusement park, right? Um, and we were like, holy shit, this is the perfect thing that we can do to help be centered, right? Let's
Yep.
advocate for that. We contacted city councilmen. We got all of our family members to contact the city council members and reject this proposal for a data center. We went out, we donated with our nonprofit funds to an organization and change.org to get this taken down. And they rejected the data center. So that's something that we advocate for, is local issues. If you are seeing that there are Republicans and Democrats coming against a data center, for example, get in on that. Contact council members, contact these people and say, we are not going to vote you in unless you reject this. Um, and we did it. You know, it's taken out. The proposal is done and gone. We found out that it was Google that was the company behind it. And yeah, so things like that locally, but working with Indivisible Kansas City, we're able to work with other organizations. We're able to work hand in hand. So Indivisible Kansas City is working on, you know, the gerrymandering. Of course, that's now been passed in the Missouri Senate, but we wanted to work with organizations like that we can in order to like sue under Missouri's constitution, because it's anti Missouri's constitution. It's against Missouri's constitution, gerrymandering.
Good,
So
good. It should be.
yeah, it should be.
It should be. It should be against all of them. Thinking on that, because I know Missouri has local and like citizen-led petitions that you can do
Yeah, yeah,
for
yeah.
laws, um, and actually do citizen-led pure democracy. I know that's also under attack in Missouri, and they're trying to change the rules on that. Can you talk a little bit about what's going on there and how you guys are involved in possibly preventing the change to, I think it's what, 80% of each district would have to approve the, I think it's 80% of the, like, that's some stupid number in each district too would have to pass. Can you talk about that? The measure they're trying to remove your pure democracy rights from.
Hmm. So, yes. So last election cycle, we had voted to codify abortion rights into Missouri's constitution. It was Amendment 3. Um, and what they're doing is they're directly putting back another amendment in order to, rescind what we did. Um, Citizen-led petitions are how we get things done here in Missouri. We actually had a citizen-led petition to end mid-district gerrymandering in Missouri, and they went back and they did another petition in order to get rid of it. So right now, even though we're having citizen petitions, it doesn't really work. It might work for a year or two, and they just anything that they don't agree with, it goes right back. Honestly, it's how it's always been. I don't think that there's many citizen-led petitions other than maybe raising the minimum wage, which they did, and they're still going back on it. So it's how we get things done in Missouri, but it's not getting anything done. 40% of people vote blue in Missouri, and 60, it's like 60-40, maybe I would say maybe 55-45, if it's a real number.
Yeah.
And they aren't actually representing. There's no proportional representation on that number, especially with the gerrymandering. How we are working to stop that is we want to work with Blue Missouri, Jess Piper. I don't know if you know who Jess Piper is.
Yeah.
She's wonderful. But she wants to run rural blue candidates. And she's also advocating for the citizen led petition, getting people involved in writing their own petitions, right?
Hmm.
Writing things on the ballot. And I think it goes right back to that grassroots messaging, getting people involved on a wider scale to get that majority support for something that they advocate for. And how do you do that? Door to doors, community messaging, town halls, but more than that, working with other groups in order to have a wider range of support for issues like that.
That's awesome. Well, one of the things I'd like to be able to do then is work with you as best as we can to support that. Whatever efforts you guys are doing from my platform itself. I'm out of Arkansas, so Missouri impacts me. Like what happens in Missouri impacts me too. Um, because if they have the gall and the ability to do it there, they'll do it here too. And they'll do it worse because Arkansas is just as bad, if not worse, at times. We
Yeah.
present ourselves better. We have a shinier exterior than Missouri or Oklahoma, but we're not doing any better on the autocracy scale. And so anything that we can do to help, or I can do to help, I'm glad to be able to. I know there's some folks in the chat talking about wanting to host a convoy and getting us into
Oh, this
like
is this is
touring,
this is
scheduling, and you talked about that a little bit. Can you talk about your idea of like getting out and actually moving around and visiting places?
so we had an idea. I know what they're talking about. I We had an idea called like Senate America Across the World or Democracy on Wheels, right? And it goes back to the civil rights movement when they were going on buses and traveling across different states in order to advocate for civil rights. Um, and we had the idea of doing a cross country kind of just convoy of vehicles that are all showing support for anti-extremism, anti-Trump, authoritarianism messaging, right? If we want to get the messaging out, we need to go, you know, across the country. And we had an idea for just like a community convoy going across the country, getting that messaging out, talking to people, setting up town halls in different states. How would we do that? A lot of funding, and we're working on it. We're working on it. How we're working on that is we need insurance. We are working on getting insurance. We have everything incorporated. We're incorporated in the state of Missouri. We have 501(c)(4. Our documentation for that. We have funding here on Substack. We also have donations. Um, but we're working on grants. There's a ton of different grants by a ton of different organizations, and we can get funding for that specifically. Um, and get other people involved in different states, meet up, stuff like that.
That's awesome. So with the Stuff going on most recently, there's been a lot of attacks around left-wing organizations,
Yeah,
wrongful attacks against organizations that are not involved and not advocating for violence in any way. In fact, we're all advocating against violence very
yeah,
openly and very loudly, saying
yeah,
peacefully and patriotically, we need to take back our country without violence
yeah,
because shooting people for your ideas is a coward's way out. The strong way, the manly, the masculine way, really, if you want to talk from a men's point of view, if you want to be masculine and protect people, talk your differences out.
yeah.
Learn how to talk and debate because then you can show your points and prove that your argument is right with words and with ideas and with facts and truth. Guns are the easy choice. That's not what we want.
I
Um,
agree.
and so like I'm so excited that you guys are doing this and are getting funding that you need to be able to move around and do things. How do you think now with the recent shooting with Charlie Kirk, how do you think or do you think this will change your plans to be able to move around and do local events or college campus events and things like that?
Um, yeah. So me and Gavin, my co-director, we originally were like, we need to go to college campuses, right? And also, while I'm talking about this, it's only been a couple months. We're trying to do as much as we can. We've done, you know, a couple things that were really impactful to local and nationwide, but we're still working hard on trying to get funding to do these things. Um, so, I'm trying to talk myself up, but there's so much more we can do, and we want to
Oh,
do as
absolutely.
much as possible in short periods of time. Um, but with this issue, it changes things because our idea for we want to go on college campuses, we want to get people out, we want to do this convoy. Now there's this level of who will be subject to violent attack, which shouldn't be the idea of resisting or a nonprofit organization at all. It shouldn't even be in the picture of how can we protect ourselves and people like ourselves or our supporters, people that are in the Senator America community, people in Banner and Backbone, how can we support those people and make sure that they aren't targets of violence? That's
Yeah.
a whole entirely different picture now. It was, "Oh, we can go to college campuses." Now it's, "How do we go to college campuses without being killed?" Like, that is
Yeah.
fucking crazy, sorry. That it's just
No,
it's
go
insane.
ahead,
Like,
man.
it's hard to picture, and so now we need to think about security. Now we need to think about, you know, um protecting ourselves with, you know, how can we set up a college campus, town hall and get security or do we need like bulletproof vests? Like what it's just completely insane to think about. Um and so because it's so recent, the plan for that, it, we haven't discussed it as much as I think that we are going to have to.
Yeah.
Um because it's a big deal. Um
Yeah, and it's a scary deal. And
yeah.
as a veteran, I went to Afghanistan to fight against this type of government. I went to Afghanistan and now we brought it home. Like it is a betrayal of everything we fought for the last 20 years in Afghanistan and in Iraq and in the years before that in Desert Storm, the years before that in Vietnam and Korea and World War II. And I was talking to my dad about this a little bit yesterday, and I wanted to bring up a point he made is we're a this is slightly off topic from what but I want to wrap it back in, is we're a generation removed from Nazism. We're the generation that lived it, that fought it, are dead. They're gone. Almost every single veteran from World War II, almost every single person who has a living memory of World War II is gone, old, or doesn't have the voice to speak out in the way that they could or used to be able to. And we've fallen because of it, because we don't have that almost trauma anymore. We had thought we had moved past it. How going forward do you plan to continue to use and build Center America to remind people of what we're fighting for rather than just what we're fighting against?
That's a loaded question,
It is a loaded question and
but
it's a tough one.
it's 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 true, right? Like it's something that we need to talk about. Um, Reminding people that this is authoritarianism is really hard, because people are able to get up out of their beds, they can go see a movie, they can go to school, right? And a lot of people have the privilege of still speaking online, right? They have the privilege of doing these things, yet and so they have this kind of, I don't know the word, kind of like ignorance to the fact that this is authoritarianism. They don't even know. And honestly, sometimes I find myself with that, right? I have to remind myself and go, this is what's going on. Not because I don't know it, but because I am a white straight male, right? And because of that, I am not going to experience the level of oppression that is going on marginalized communities. I can't. And I have to remind myself that that is going on and I have to
Yeah.
fight for it. And so having to remind myself and other people is hard. But I think the best thing that we can do is look at the past, right? I was doing a live before, but I was talking about On Tyranny,
Yeah.
by Timothy Snyder. The fact that even during Nazi Germany, before, Hitler really came into power, journalists were saying that will never happen. It will never happen. They will never, oppress the Jewish people. They'll never, violently, kill them or send them to concentration camps. They were saying this. They were saying there's no way that Hitler will ever do what they're going to do, what he says he's going to do, because we have systems and institutions that will protect us from that.
Yeah.
Okay. That's
Lies and slander.
yeah, 100%. And so now we have to frame it as look at the past and compare it to now. We still don't have institutions that will protect us. We have to protect the institutions in order for them to protect us.
Yeah.
And how do you do that? How do you message in that way? And I think it's a conversation that we all need to have because it's a lot more it's a wide conversation, but I think it has to do with going to the past, comparing it to now, and explaining that just because you can wake up in the morning doesn't mean that people are being oppressed. Just because the sun rises doesn't mean there's darkness. There's not darkness coming out of Washington, D.C., right? Like, and it's also scary with what happened with Charlie Kirk. They're like, it's the left, it's the left, it's the left. Bullshit. But they're saying it's the left, it's the left, it's the left. And then they're advocating for a concentration camp. Like they're advocating for concentration camps basically. They're advocating for a facility that's surrounded by alligators and joking about it with AI images, laughing about the slaughter and killing of families, breaking up families. Like I just that to me is horrendous, horrifying, and something that we desperately need to get on. And so in these community town halls, these convoys, these, messaging across the aisle, going to places like DC, covering it on hand, firsthand, speaking about how just because you can wake up and do and make breakfast doesn't mean that people aren't being oppressed and doesn't mean we aren't actively living through authoritarianism.
Yeah. And I think that's an important reminder is authoritarianism hits communities differently depending on how you look and how closely from an outward appearance you align with the regime or with whoever's in charge, the dictator, the authoritarian, the fascist, whatever they want to call
Mhm.
themselves. we won't see it in the same ways. And we live in rural areas too. Like we live in two center of America rural areas or rural states on average that are red leaning and will feel the least brunt of the impact too. Um, how are you working on your messaging to really dig into that idea of, because you were talking about like how it feels differently for each of us, and sometimes we have to remind ourselves we're living through the be, like the rise of a fascistic regime in America. Is how are you going out to talk to people about that? And what is your messaging like? What are some of the words and things that you're actually saying to people or using to help influence people and remind them that even though it's not touching you right now physically, it is still impacting you.
Yeah. I think the best way that we can speak about it, especially young men, um, because young men, especially young white men, are completely oblivious. My peers, people that I went to school with, people that I'm in college with now, have no idea, and they are completely oblivious to it. The I honestly, I think it's more of the history perspective of it. I think you have to relate it to now. Um, Honestly, having conversations with extremists, I think, are always gonna be difficult, and I don't know if we're ever going to be able to have those conversations with people that are pro MAGA. I think that we should, and I think we should, there's always gonna be an after, right? We're gonna have to live together. We're gonna have to live alongside these people and still get back to that majority. Um, but we have to think about an after. And I'm not trying to, side away from your question. I'm trying to tie it in.
No, 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 absolutely.
Mhm. I think that when it comes to extremists, the conversation I don't think is now. I think it's we need to get the people that are the majority um, heard because the majority isn't being heard. And I think there's a lot of talk about how people don't understand, but Pew Research studies show and Reuters studies show that a lot of people, like 70% of people, are watching very intently on what's going on with Trump. Um, the majority doesn't support uh, immigration facilities like the one in Florida. So I think the conversation isn't trying to convince people that we're under authoritarianism, it's trying to bring it to light. And I think that they don't want it to be brought to light. I don't think they want people to go, hey, are we seeing the same thing? Right?
Yeah,
Hey, this is what we think it is, right? Um, and I think a lot of people know that. I think the majority of people know that. And we are only seeing the extremist rhetoric, which is oblivious to it.
yeah,
Um, and so I think it's about bringing it to light. How do we need to do that? Honestly, I think it has to do with organizing on a community scale, but also utilizing social media in a way that works. Um, because social media is all algorithms. Sorry to make this a
yeah.
long answer, but
No, take all the time you want, man.
social media is a very difficult tool to use because algorithms work to against people, right?
Yeah,
If you're under one box, you're going to be in that box. How do we get out of that box? Um, and I think it's using it left and right. And it goes back to what Charlie Kirk was doing. How can we utilize that for ourselves?
yeah,
Um, and so he went to college campuses. He had debates with, people that were left wing. He had people that were right wing supporting him. And so people that were on the right and on the left both watched Charlie Kirk. We all knew about him. We knew what he said. We knew what people were responding with. We knew who was debating him, and so we all were seeing it. That's an
Yeah.
algorithmic masterpiece, right? Having the ability to see all different angles of this person, supporting and not supporting, that's he hit the algorithm like masterpiece, right? He's able to talk to all types of individuals. And how do we utilize that for ourselves? Getting that centered messaging left and right. Um, and we should do that by talking to people online like this, speaking across the aisle, speaking with Republicans. I think that Kamala Harris's, Republicans for Harris was a good thing, but we need it on a wider scale.
Yeah.
Getting other people that are against Trump to speak with us and sit down with us and talk on social media.
Yeah. I think that all of that's a great point. And I think talking on social media is our starting piece, which we're doing right now, where we're all gathering together. There's almost 200 people here with us right now who are listening to this discussion. People have been rolling in throughout. It's great to see that everybody is coming in and listening. All of you, all of the people here. If every single person here were to just share this with one other person, and that's 400 people who will probably share it again with somebody else. Is all you have to do at the end of this to help get this message out and get what Sherrod has been talking about and what I've been talking about and getting local organization and local action. Another great tool is runforsomething.net. Runforsomething.net is a local and state candidacy training program. It's an online course to train you how to be a candidate to run for local and state office. We will put it in the show notes afterwards, like I do a lot of times about this, is runforsomething.net. Even if you're not going to actually run, go sign up. I've signed up. I haven't finished everything in there, but fill out a profile, fill all your information out. Because even if you're not going to run, you can learn how to help another person run. And so I think support isn't always money. We have to remember that. Like Fred Wellman, a guest I've had and a contributor on Midas Touch Network, he's been on Banner and Backbones Vet Talks a couple times now, is he always talks about support isn't always about money. It's your effort. It's the actions you do and the things you do. And the simplest entry to civics right now is in social media. It's literally listen, share, and restack. Like,
Yeah, I agree. I think that it's not always money. I always tell that everything that we put out, our news updates, it's all free. We never
mhm,
have anything under this paid idea. If people want to support us, they always can. But I really like what Terry Moran was doing, and I think that's something that we need to do, which is a citizen reporting effort. As in, if there's something going on in a community, abuses of power, send it in, and we will report on it and get the message out. We'll credit you, we'll say where it's at, and we'll make sure that people are hearing it. I think that people with larger platforms or people with even smaller platforms, right? Like Center in America, we have like 10,000 subscribers, like 30,000 followers on Substack, right? Um, roughly. And if you were to go, hey, this is an abuse of power, I'm sending it in and we were able to report on that, more people are going to see it. More people are going to spread it. More people are going to share it. That's how we also utilize social media to our advantage, which is if there's something going on, let us know. If there's something you need to talk about, right? I always say this in my lives, which is I'm not going to know everything, right? I can
mhm,
have an idea. You all are going to know a lot as well. Let's all contribute. And, if there's something that I don't know, I'm going to be like, I don't know, right? Like,
yep.
what do you have to say about it? Let's combine our ideas and let's get something out. Also, what you were saying about a united citizen effort to defend the Constitution is a big thing that I advocate for.
Which is awesome. So I wanna pull on that thread a little because something that Banner and Backbone is starting to do is we're putting out ideas for constitutional amendments. We're advocating for amending the Constitution because I think we've been lied to for the last 40 plus years that the Constitution is unamendable, that it is stuck, that it is just a dead document that doesn't can't be changed anymore. But it has been. The first thing they did was change it 10 times to get the states to ratify it. Like there were constitutional amendments almost every 20 years in our history up until not too long ago. Um, can you talk about like one of the things is we're proposing six constitutional amendments at the moment. We're working on them. We're beginning to write them out and flesh them out in public too and get feedback. And I'd love to invite you back to have a discussion with Lawrence Winterman on it,
Oh, yeah.
and that idea, as well as see if we could get Evan Fields involved, who's a contributor on Lincoln Square. He came on for a vet talk yesterday with me. um, he did a master's thesis on local engagements and town halls and the use of local democracy and how and its importance. And I think he would be a great resource for you guys to partner with, and for us. And I'd love to be able to partner with you guys in whatever way we can,
Yeah.
to help spread the message. You're a much larger platform than we are. We're just moving fast and getting out there. You guys have an incredible audience that I think from today, like I also agree, is if you have stories, if you have accurate stories that you are seeing and reporting on, it's a citizen-led journalist movement. There's a million stories and a million and 10 million voices that can tell them. We may as well use all 10 million of them. Like we need 3.5% of the population actively engaged at all times in the US. That's just about 12 million people, 13 million people. That means 13 million people should be reporting stories every single day from every single community. And if you have them, take send them to us. Shrad said send them to him, send them to us too on Banner and Backbone.
Exactly.
Send them to us. Tell us those stories. We will give you credit for reporting them because it's a citizen-led journalist movement. Washington Post was right. Democracy dies in darkness. Well, they brought the darkness. We're just going to undo it. So I want to give you the last couple minutes here, before we're getting close to the top of the hour. I want to give you the time. Plug yourself, plug Centered America, plug everything that you do, and to that way we can get everything in the show notes. We can get you guys as much support and help as possible, and how we can make this movement bigger.
Yeah, so we have a website, centeredamerica.org. You can go to our website and you can volunteer. We can also partner with you if you're an organization. You can just fill out the forms. We have all the forms on our website. It's really quick, and it's just tons of information, and we can best figure out what you can be good at. Volunteering door to door. We are working on we also have our Substack. You can subscribe to our Substack. Um, if you want to be a paid subscriber, you can. You don't have to. Everything that we post is free. All of it has to do with the messaging and you getting out there and your support and reporting if there's something that's going on in your area locally. Also, we are working on so right now our volunteering forms on our website are there, but we also want to make sure that you have liability, right? We want to make sure that anyone who's volunteering is protected. So we are working on getting insurance now. We are very close to just having the best quote and getting that out and done, so that you have liability, and then also we're protected because we're the directors and we don't want a lawsuit on our hands. But
Yep.
yeah, so anyone who goes and signs that form and puts that in, we'll contact you. Our email is info@centeredamerica.org. You can contact us with any questions about how to get involved. You can also contact us if you have any stories that you want to report on, anything that you're like, hey, dig deeper into this. We do a lot of deep research dives. So Stephen Miller and Peter Thiel, we did a huge paper on that. Um, we are wanting to lobby, right? So Nick, you said that you have constitutional amendments that you're working on. Um, we can actually use our organization to work on getting those out there because we legally can. I also suggest thinking about a 501c4 organization for those things. or a
Yeah,
501(c)(3) because it works. You have the legal ability to do those things and get them out there, and you're protected in that way. But yeah, that's Center America. We're also on TikTok and Instagram. Our TikTok has a lot of people that tune in. We got like 400,000 views on a video like a
that's
little while
freaking
ago
awesome.
talking about Missouri gerrymandering. So, really cool. But yeah,
That's
that's
awesome.
everything. That's everything. Really.
Awesome. I really appreciate it, man. This has been a really insightful conversation for me, and I have learned quite a bit. And I think this is one of my favorite parts about doing this is coming on and actually learning things, um, and hearing what you guys are doing so well that is really needed. So, in my estimation, we are 40 years behind on organizing as a pro democracy side of the house. We have 1 year, we have less than a year at this point to finish 40 years of organizing in a year. It's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah.
Which is why I'm also advocating for there's a million voices or 10 million voices to do all of that work. We need all of you guys. So for the hun or and gals and others and anywhere in between, like we need every single person right now to join, support us, subscribe for free to both our channels if you aren't already. Become a paid subscriber if you can to both our channels already, and Banner and Backbone if you can. We're trying to build that network up as well to support things like what Centered America is doing and get their message out and be the reporters that are needed. Um, so this has been like I said, this has been awesome, man. Like I truly appreciate it, and I really hope to have you back again soon. I think there's some really interesting discussions we can keep having, especially around policy issues, local organization, um, and actually before we go, there's a No Kings rally coming up, um, and I want to know what your thoughts are on it, and how we can all be prepared for it, because we have to go. Everyone should be out for No Kings. If you're not going out for No Kings, like, do you even really care at this
Yeah.
point? So
I
go out.
I agree. Last No Kings, we did a table where we just sat. I suggest you do it too. We did a just a table. We had like little signs that showed like you could do Banner and Backbone. We had our Center in America logo, and we passed out water. We passed out food. We passed out snacks. Honestly, we could work on having like a mutual fund where we can pay for you to pass out food and water and snacks and talk about what you're doing. Um, that's what we do when we go to protests is we're just trying to help people stay hydrated. We talk to them about our message, but how to get prepared, go. I think it's
Mhm.
scary because of the violence, but we need all to be there, and honestly getting as many people out as possible is the best bet and best move. We haven't hit that 3.5% threshold though. you know at I don't know. I've heard a
I
lot of
think we have.
I think we have, but I it was like 11 million people, right? At the last No Kings. I think we were a little over or a little under, but of course, hitting 3.5% isn't just going to automatically do something just because you have a lot of people out. But it shows we're all in unison organizing. I think though that protests without those tables where you're talking to people about what you're doing is just solidified protesting. I think we also need to talk to each other, right?
Yeah.
And meeting people. So that's why I suggest people that want to talk about policy, want to talk about organizing, want to talk about their ideas, set up a table and pass out waters, pass out little infographics. You can just print them out and just pass people out little flyers, things that you have ideas about. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, I really appreciate all of it, and I appreciate all the information, the great conversation today, the engagement from everyone in the chat. It's been fantastic. I love seeing and hearing all the notes go through. I've been trying to keep up with a bunch. I know we haven't commented on all of the things that have gone in the chat. You guys are going strong in there and having great conversations. And that's part of it too, is you guys are discussing while we're discussing the things that we're talking about and planning and making and telling your stories. Tell your story. Get out there. And as I always say now at the end of every episode, and it's my platitude for everyone to go have a great time and go do something, is let's stop being sick of this shit and let's start doing this shit. So I'll see y'all later today. Look out for me on Banner and Backbone with Ellie Leonard in the afternoon. Tomorrow's another huge day for the show with Wajahat Ali from the Left Hook coming on, Joe Walsh, Knights of the Rainbow Table, and a Nazi discussion with Tim Whitaker. Before you go too, because you talked about it a little bit, is I want to invite you and everyone in the audience every Friday at 12:30 Eastern Time. Banner and Backbone is hosting the virtual anti-fascist book club, set up and originally organized through Chris Goldsmith and Veterans Fighting Fascism. Um, we would love everybody to show up. Chris Goldsmith is our special guest for this Friday's episode. For our second episode, we'll be reading and discussing one of his writings on what is fascism, and a John Lewis writing on, I believe it's on love and how we can act. And so I would invite everybody in the audience here 12:30 Eastern, to come and join us for the
Yeah.
Banner and Backbone Anti-Fascist Book Club. I'll make sure to boost our previous episode so you know what we talked about and what books to read. And then next week is on tyranny, is what we're going to plan to read, assuming I get my book in from the library that I'm waiting on. But again, thank you everyone for coming. Thanks for sticking with us. Appreciate all the great conversation. We're going to be working on the local level to help make some change. Please get out there and help us. Thanks, everyone. And again, let's stop being sick of this shit. Let's do this shit
Thank you
and
for
go
having me
make a
on.
difference. Thanks, man. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.